Let's talk about one of the most awful runs I've had recently. I promised you when I started this YouTube channel and started documenting my training to the Great World Race that I was not just going to show you guys the highlight reels. I wanted to show you the good, the bad, the ugly, the dirty, the nasty, the sloppy, the amazing, but all of that. I want to show you the process. About a month ago, I was on vacation in Cabo in Mexico, and I had one of the most awful runs, actually the most awful run that I've had since I started the Great World Race training. That's saying a lot because I go out for runs in minus 40, minus 30. Those are amazing, actually. This awful run was indoors on a treadmill, and it was hot. I want to talk about this to dissect it because often when we have a bad run or a bad workout, we immediately turn on ourselves. I should have blah, blah, X, Y, Z, I should train harder. And sometimes our immediate response is, I just need to do better, or I need to go harder. And that's sometimes not good because that was not at all my conclusion from this awful run. I want to walk you through the process of how I've learned to dissect these things mentally, physically, in the moment, and then afterwards to make sure that, yes, if there are things I could have done differently, I will do them differently, but to not immediately come to the conclusion, I just need to try harder. That is a pattern I see with people I've coached. They just think I need to try harder. If you're here, I know that you are obviously a high performer, are intelligent. You're looking for how can I do better and level up and kind of take myself with me, if you get what I mean. It's not just, well, I'm going to attack myself first. I want to talk through this really logically because that's what saved me on that day. Didn't make it any easier, didn't make it any better, but it really saved me and I completed the run. Where I was, in a gym, totally used to that, on a treadmill, totally used to that, 7-mile run, totally used to that. I'm used to doing long, boring miles on a treadmill because that's what I do during the week here at my house. But it was the heat, the cumulative impact of being on vacation and not eating my normal foods, and I'm going to dissect that because I did not go off the rails or anything like that, but I want to dissect that and how that compounded leading up to this run. And living in Canada, I really am used to running in cooler temperatures. They kind of created a perfect storm for me to have a run that I really had to dig into the depths of my soul to finish, but it taught me a lot. The technical failure of this run. The three main contributing factors to why it sucked so bad was A, vacation. When I go on vacation, I don't track macros. I just don't believe in doing that anymore when you're on vacation. When you know your nutrition and you know macros, you can't unsee macros. That's one of the gifts of macros. You can see protein, you can see carbs, you can see fat. So my strategy when I go on vacation, primarily number one, don't eat like an asshole. Because we all know when we're doing that on vacation. Excuse my language, but it's the best way for me to say it. It's so true, right? We all know when we're eating like a big jerk. So that's principle number one. So what I do is I pay attention to portion sizes. Portion sizes, protein first, vegetables. Because I'm paying attention to portion sizes, protein, and vegetables primarily, starchy carbohydrates, those got left behind. And my body as a runner needs, wants, desires, loves the starchy carbohydrates. However, when you've got restaurant meals that inevitably have higher amounts of fat just in the cooking process, I stayed away from a lot of the starchy carbs because I'm getting enough portion sizes and I'm getting enough calories, but it's a very different makeup than what I would eat at home. So when this run happened, I'd been there for about 2 weeks, and that is an ongoing depletion of glycogen stored in my body. So carbohydrates stored in our muscles and in our liver is stored as glycogen. After 2 weeks of focusing on portion sizes, protein, and overall caloric content, I was glycogen depleted. My body did not have enough gas in the tank. That might not have been a big deal if I was just running 5Ks and things like that. Not to poo-poo 5Ks. If you're doing that, that's amazing. But with my 40 miles per week right now that I'm averaging in this training, this phase 2 of my training, being carbohydrate, glycogen depleted is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And I was definitely glycogen depleted. Not sleeping in my own bed. There were a couple nights where there were parties happening around us, and so that inevitably wakes us up. This resort is actually really great for shutting that stuff down, which they did. But there happened to be 2 nights kind of in a row where we were woken up and there were parties, and so my sleep wasn't great. Environmental stress. Heat, which I have to get better at, and I've got plans this summer to go train in some heat. Humidity. Now, Cabo is not a humid part of Mexico at all. That's one of the reasons why we like going there. It's a desert. However, in an indoor space, it was humid in that gym because you have tons of humidity from humans being in there. So it was very hot. The air conditioning hadn't been turned on yet. It kind of created this heat bubble, which was a great learning experience for what I'm going to be going through when I train in the hotter environments. However, heat and humidity, lack of great sleep, being glycogen depleted, oh my gosh. I just felt awful. Not sick, not dizzy, none of that. That would have made me stop because I don't play with fire. My body felt like I might as well have had 2 10-pound ankle weights on my ankles, and then trying to run, like my legs just felt like dead weights. I had no drive, and oh my goodness, it was a challenge. If you're a runner watching this, I know you know that feeling. You cannot make them feel lighter, move more fluidly. So that sets the scene. So that's the technical reason for why I know I got to that place of just feeling like total poop on that run. Now I want to talk through how I worked through it. Because I immediately thought, Caroline, there is no negotiation for you not finishing this run. So how are you going to work through it? Step number 1, verbal acceptance. What this does for me is it neutralizes the charge around the feeling of, oh, why is this so hard? Because that becomes a routine thing that will just run like a hamster wheel in my head. My self-talk can go south so fast if I just don't accept reality. This sucks today. Really sucks. So what I said to myself instead was, this is really difficult today. That's okay. You're going to have the tough run. It just eliminates that fight. And the kind of fight where your brain can just become very destructive. So the message that my brain gets is, well, I can't win them all, but it takes the emotional charge out of a bad run that could become a spiral down. Step number 2, micro-chunking. That's a technical term, micro-chunking. No, I'm kidding. I don't know what that is, but that's how I think about it in my head. How can I break this run down into smaller bits that my brain can latch onto? I started to feel awful about 1 mile into a 7-mile run, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have 6 more miles to go. And I really kept at the beginning thinking, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. I should just stop. It's okay to miss 1 run. Not happening. So I have to break it down into smaller pieces. Instead of thinking about the 7 miles, I started thinking about 1 mile at a time. And you might have heard, if you're a runner, the saying, run the mile that you're in. That's all I kept thinking about, 1 mile at a time, because in that heat and humidity, I was running at about a 10-minute per mile pace to keep my heart rate in zone 2. So I kept telling myself, I can do anything for 10 minutes. I can run for 10 minutes. This really reduced the cognitive load that I felt during that run. Because the brain can really handle 1 more mile at a time, 1 more mile at a time. And after every mile, I would stop for maybe about 10 seconds to take a sip of water so that my brain knew at the end of that mile, there was a reward. Strategy number 3, toddler talk. Talking to myself as if I'm a 3-year-old. Because when the brain starts to panic, it doesn't understand complex reasoning. Yes, I had moved the decision-making into the logic part, but I still feel heavy. It doesn't change how I'm feeling. So I started using really simple, positive statements to myself. Like, you are going to learn so much from doing this. When you're running 7 marathons, if you wake up and feel not great that day, you're still going to have to run that marathon. So this is going to teach you how to do that. You're doing great. I'm proud of you. 1 mile at a time. Just little tiny things to keep myself in a constructive mindset. Not necessarily positive. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I've said before, we can't always be positive. And in that moment, I was not positive. What I always aim to stay is constructive. Because feeling like a big pile of poo on a run and being constructive can exist in the same place. Your body can feel tired. Your body can feel worn. You can be glycogen depleted. You can be sleep deprived. And you're not going to be that, oh, well, I'm just going to think positive. That is such a pile of horse dung. What we can stay is constructive. So those two things do not oppose each other. They can live together. And so that's my mindset with this, with the toddler talk. That actually excites me, because when I go and run those marathons and I feel like a big pile of poo on one day, which is going to happen, I'm going to be like, I've done this before. I remember when I ran the Toronto Marathon in 2023, and the last 5 miles, I had a headwind. And training out here in the prairies in Canada where I live, there is always a headwind. I can't get away from it. No matter which way I run, I feel like I'm always running into the wind. And I remember on those training runs thinking, Caroline, on marathon day, you're not going to get to choose which way the wind's blowing. So you have to just use this, just run, just who cares about the wind? And then on the day that I ran the marathon, like I said, last 5 miles, there was a headwind. I felt comfortable. I actually felt a sense of comfort. And what immediately popped into my head was, oh, you've done this before. Whatever, one step at a time, that's all it takes. I couldn't even believe it. That's the power of staying constructive in your mindset. You don't have to be positive, but you can always be constructive, because you never know when you're going to need to pull out that constructive self-talk. So the verdict, the run was a success, even though it was awful. But why? Because I effectively managed my body fatigue. I effectively managed my mental fatigue. I finished the run and I dealt with myself in the moment in a constructive way. Those are all tools to use in life, but especially on a run or a workout. So all in all, so far early in this training, early in phase 2 training, this was probably one of the most realistic scenarios I could have bumped up against, because it required me in the moment when I felt so tired to use my mental toolkit. We all have a mental toolkit. And it really is our job, yes, do the physical training, but what are the tools that I'm putting into that toolkit that I can pull out when I need it? Because a plumber or an electrician doesn't go to a job site without their toolkit fully stocked. They have everything in there they need. And most of the time, they're probably only using 1 to 2 to 3% of what's in that toolkit. But my goodness, if they come across a scenario where they need that wrench they bought at that random hardware store 5 years ago because it was so one of a kind, whatever, and they have it, sets them apart. That's how I look at this training, is that I'm constantly trying to put things into my mental toolkit that I can pull out whenever I need it. And the same is true for you. If you really get down on yourself during bad runs or bad workouts, take something from what I've talked about here, write it down on a piece of paper, take it with you on a run. You might be in a funk and you're like, oh, I've felt maybe there's too much pressure to always be positive. Just work on being constructive. Maybe your self-talk gets out of control and the spiral inevitably happens. Try the toddler talk, because I don't want for myself or for anyone watching to fear the bad runs, because that's where you learn so much. Because the truth of the matter is, in these micro segments, these smaller runs, these training runs that you're doing, or these workouts, working up to an athletic goal or a physique goal, if you can master those micro moments, those add up. Those really add up. And inevitably, it's going to lead to you winning. It's absolutely going to lead to you winning. I hope there is something you got out of this video that you can take away, a little snapshot, something you can walk away with and apply to your own training. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe to my channel, follow me on Instagram, follow my journey to the Great World Race, 7 marathons, 7 days in 1 week. If there's anything else you want to see that you want me to go over, please fire away in the comments. Take a look at all my training data. It's out in the open. I'll link that in the comments. Otherwise, happy running. Have a great day. Stay constructive.